Here we are, live again. Thank you once again for joining me. Just see there is a few people there. Okay, let's get straight into it. What I want to talk about today is something a little bit different because I believe it explains why so many business owners often feel stuck, overwhelmed, frustrated, trapped, even when the business appears to be successful from the outside. And something I've come to realise over the years is that not all business owners are operating at the same level of thinking. And the challenges that we experience in business have got a lot less to do with the economy, the competition, or luck, and far more to do with the level that you and me, as the owners, are currently operating from. So I want to share with you something that shows you why this happens. It's often called the entrepreneurial ladder, and it's the result of bringing together a number of concepts, predominantly Michael Gerber's E-Myth and Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. And I absolutely love it because it explains so well why running a business can sometimes feel really difficult at different stages of growth, and why some owners feel trapped, while some go on to create freedom, growth, choice, momentum. Now, I've adapted the model slightly into what, for me, is a more realistic journey for most business owners, because I believe the goal in business is not more turnover. The goal is building a business that creates for you more freedom, more control, and more choice over your future. So before we get into it, does your business currently feel like freedom or responsibility? Does it feel like opportunity or pressure? Because the answer to those questions often reveals where you currently sit on the ladder. And for me, you actually step onto the first rung of the ladder before you even start a business. It's what I call the technician rung. It's where most people start their journey: school, college, uni, training, apprenticeship, employment. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there is a slight problem. Most people are trained to become good at the work. They get little or no training at all about how to go about building a business. And those two things are completely different skill sets. Think about it. A brilliant chef, builder, accountant, engineer, tradesperson, solicitor, hairdresser, consultant does not automatically become brilliant at sales, marketing, finance, leadership, emotional intelligence, systems, cash flow, or business strategy. And this is why, for me, so many people struggle when they first go into business, because they know how to do the work, but they don't necessarily know how to build a business around that work. Think about when you first went into first went into business. Did you know things like how to price properly, how to market effectively, how to manage your cash flow, how to build systems, how to recruit people, lead teams, read the numbers? Or did you mostly learn, like I did, through trial, error, stress, and blinking expensive lessons? I think the truth is that most of us did it the latter way. That's pretty normal. The second rung on the ladder is what I call the self-employed trap. And this is where many business owners spend years, sometimes decades. And this rung often starts off excitedly because you're finally working for yourself. You've now got freedom. You've got no boss telling you what to do. But very quickly, something else happens. The penny drops. And the penny that drops is you are the business, because you're the one making the sales. You're the one answering the emails. You're the one solving the problems, chasing the money, delivering the work, handling the complaints. You carry all the pressure. And suddenly you realise that you haven't actually escaped employment. You suddenly employ yourself. And you might not like the way that the new boss does things. Now, I'm wondering, how many of you have felt that if you were to slow down, everything else slows down? If you were to stop, everything else would stop? Because that there That there is the self-employed trap. And one of the biggest red flags that somebody is stuck at this level is phrases like, if you want a job done right, you've got to do it yourself. And whilst that can sound like high standards, it's more likely that there's a systems leadership or a delegation problem. And if the business only works because everything exists inside your head, then you haven't truly built a business. Not yet, anyway. What you've done is you've built yourself a job. Another huge challenge on this rung is something that I call the seesaw effect. You find the work and you do the work. And while you're doing the work, you stop finding the work. And the cash in the bank starts to dry up. So you go back to finding work again. And as a result of that, deliveries suffer. Marketing's got no consistency, sales dip, and your stress rises. Then the cycle rinses and repeats over and over again. You get caught in a loop. And choosing to do business that way becomes really exhausting. That's also why so many business owners burn out, because they're trying to be the owner, the manager, the salesperson, the technician, the marketer, the finance department, the customer service department, the problem solver, all at the same time. And that's a heck of a lot of hats to wear. So let me ask you, which parts of your business still rely too much on you? What breaks when you're unavailable? And in your business, what only works because you're personally holding it together? Because those things there reveal where dependency still exists. And then eventually, provided the owner does survive this ring, and sadly many don't, but if they do, they move up to the next rung, which is the manager rung. And this is where things start getting really interesting, because many business owners think once I hire people, everything's going to get easier. I certainly got suckered into that one. But more often than not, the opposite happens at first. Because now you've got communication challenges, you've got leadership challenges, you've got training challenges, you've got culture challenges, you've got recruitment challenges, you've got relationship challenges, you've got management challenges. And many business owners become frustrated because the team doesn't think like they do, or the team doesn't really care like they do, or the team don't perform consistently like they do. But here's something really important. Most businesses do not have a people problem. Most businesses do not have a people problem. They have a systems problem. They have a leadership problem. They have a clarity problem. And what I learned the hard way is that people perform far better when expectations are clear, systems are clear, standards are clear, and feedback is clear. So for me, this is the rung where the owner must learn something incredibly important, and that is how to stop doing everything personally. And that can feel emotionally uncomfortable. And that happens because many business owners secretly build their identity around being needed. But if the owner continues to rescue everyone, then nobody else can grow. And one of the biggest mindsets that, put your teeth in, Kev, mindset shifts here is that your job is no longer to do the work. Your job now becomes building systems and people that can do the work consistently without the need for constant supervision. And that's a massive game-changing shift for you to make. So this is where things like checklists, systems, processes, training, KPIs, dashboards, leadership rhythms become incredibly important, because your business cannot outgrow the systems holding it together. Consider this. Are your systems currently reducing stress or creating more chaos? Because great systems should save you time, energy, money, mistakes, and your blinking sanity. And then eventually, if the owner keeps growing, they move up to what I call the leadership rung. And this is where the business starts becoming less dependent on the owner. Now, I do think it's important for me to be clear on this. This doesn't mean the owner disappears. It means the business becomes more structured, predictable, systemized, and led through people and systems instead of constant firefighting. So this is where things like leadership teams emerge. Managers start to take ownership. Culture strengthens. Communication improves. Systems mature. And the owner starts spending more time thinking strategically instead of reactively. And this is the rung that also changes everything emotionally, because now the owner stops carrying the entire business personally. And for the owner, that actually creates more space, more clarity. It helps better decision making, and it often makes for a much calmer life. So, what would change in your life if the business no longer depended on you just about every minute of the day? What would now become possible? Because this rung is where something really powerful begins happening. The owner gains choices. And something I've realised, something really important, is the true power of business is not just income, it's choice. And some people are perfectly happy to stay on that leadership rung, by the way, but some choose to continue growing and climb to the next rung, which is the ownership rung. And this is where the business finally starts becoming an asset. Not just a job, an asset. And an asset's job is to return. And for your asset, your business, to exponentially return, you could do things like scale your business. You could duplicate the model. You could open additional locations. You could franchise. You could license. You could let your leadership team run the business for you. You could appoint an MD. You could sell the business, or you could simply enjoy owning it without the constant stress and pressure, because the business now works through systems, leadership, a high impact culture, measurement, momentum, and not just your personal effort. I also think it's worth mentioning here that most business owners never reach the top level. And some, sadly, choose to stay trapped in the doing, in the reacting, and in the firefighting. And this is why the confident roadmap matters so much. I mentioned the roadmap, so I might as well I'll bring it up for you. 1 second. I think, could somebody just give me a thumbs up? Let's say they can see my screen. Thanks. Right, so this roadmap is not just about improving the business performance. It's about helping the owner move up that ladder from technician to self-employed, to manager to leader to owner. And one of the biggest shifts that has to happen on the journey through this roadmap is that the owner must grow themselves. Because your business will rarely outgrow your thinking, your leadership, your standards, or your self-awareness. As the famous and brilliant philosopher, the late great Jim Rohn once said, never wish life were easier, wish you were better. Never wish life were easier, wish you were better. Yeah? Now, in this case, that can be adapted to never wish business were easier, wish you were better at business. Never wish business were easier, wish you were better at business. And honestly, that quote changed the way I looked at growth, because every level of business requires a different version of you. And I've experienced that personally throughout my own journey. The version of me that opened my very first bar in Manchester back in 1982, and I grew the turnover from, say, £120,000 to £180,000 in the first 12 months. And I had about 15 employees, but I was working ridiculous hours, up to 90 hours a week. Now, that version of me would have been completely out of his depth running my first restaurant, which is about a decade later. Now, when I got that business, it was turning over about 800k, and I got it up to about 1.5 million in a year. And I had a team of roughly 50 million people. And that required far better systems, much better organisation, better communication, better leadership, and a completely different level of thinking. The truth is, I thought I'd arrived. I thought I'd cracked this thing called business. But here's what's fascinating. The version of me that opened that first restaurant would have been completely out of its depth in my final hospitality business. Because that business grew to around 3.5 million in turnover and I had a team of 95 people. But at that stage, I was working no more than 20 hours a week instead of the 90 that I was working in business number one. Now, that drop in hours didn't happen because I'd suddenly become lazy. It happened because the systems evolved, the leadership evolved, the business evolved, and most importantly, I evolved. And at every level of growth, it required from me a different mindset, a different identity, a different set of skills, a different way of leading. And this is one of the things that far too many business owners miss. What gets the business to one level is often not what's going to get it to the next. So let me ask you, who does your business currently need you to become? Because the version of you that started a business is not the same version of you that is needed to lead a team. And the version of you that's needed to lead a team is not the same version of you that's needed to build an asset. So what does your business currently need you to become better at? That could be things like leadership, communication, finance, sales, delegation, decision-making, systems, strategy. It might be all those things and more. Because growth in business is rarely just operational, it's personal too. Another thing I've learned is that the hardest work in business is not usually the doing, it's the learning. Learning to lead, learning how to delegate, learning how to manage emotions, learning how to make better decisions, learning how to communicate, learning how to think strategically, how to build systems, how to help people grow, how to say no. That's the real work. And the businesses that continue growing usually have owners who continue growing too. So where are you currently on the ladder? Are you still trapped doing everything? Are you still reacting constantly? Are you starting to build systems? Are you starting to build a team? Are you starting to think strategically? Or are you starting to build an asset? Because awareness for you changes absolutely everything. Okay, your momentum move for today is this. I want you to identify where you currently are on the ladder and what the next rung is going to require from you. Not from the business, from you. What skills need strengthening? What habits need improving? What systems need building? What responsibilities need handing over? What conversations need to take place? Because the truth is, the next level of business growth requires the next level of owner growth first. Now, to help you with that, if you'd like a copy of my ebook, 44 Lessons Learned from 44 Years in Business, just drop the word lessons into the comments and I'll send it over to you. And if this session has made you realize that you may be stuck on one of the long rungs of the entrepreneurial ladder, or that your business still depends way too much on you, or that you're not quite sure how to get up to the next rung, follow the link in the comments and choose a time that suits you best for us to have a conversation. And in that conversation, together we'll identify where you are now, what's slowing down growth, and what needs to happen to build a business that creates for you more choice, more clarity, more control, more confidence, more freedom, and more choice. Because ultimately, the goal is not simply to own a business, it's to build a business that works for you, instead of one that could eventually control you. Okay, we'll leave it there. Until the next live, which is going to be the same time, same place on Tuesday, where we'll be going into the, it's still on the screen, the roadmap. We're going to go into that roadmap in a bit more depth. And you're going to be able to gauge exactly where your business is leaking time, energy, and money, and what you can do to plug those holes. It's going to be a good one, I promise you. Now, in the meantime, have a cracking weekend, and remember to keep building intentionally and keep creating momentum. Thank you for watching.